All good to go. Let's get underway. I'm Councillor Bristow. I'm the new chair of the committee. Wonderful to meet you all. Item 1 on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. Are they agreed?
I have an issue, Chair, with the minutes of the previous meeting.
Please, Councillor Barron.
So under item 9 of the minutes, it notes an action point that says feedback the costs of the housing open day. The actual action point that was agreed in the meeting was to feedback the costs of a video that was made of the housing open day. Sorry to be nitpicky, but the action is not recorded down correctly.
No, that is quite an important distinction. Yes, if the officers agreed that is the case, so we have to have that amended, Kaylee.
Yeah, it was agreed, yes. Yeah, I recall that discussion.
Fantastic. We'll get that amended in that case. Otherwise, are there any concerns or are we happy to agree the minutes?
Agreed.
Very good. Okay, moving on to item 2. Apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Carrie Link. And we have Councillor Stevens subbing in her place. Any other apologies? Nope. Very well. Moving on, declarations of interest. Do we have any disclosable pecuniary interests? No. In that case, we'll move on to item 4. That's public participation. I understand there is no public participation, so we shall move on to item 5. As we do so, I think as I am new, we should do a little whip round of the officers so they can all introduce themselves. Starting with Natasha, I suppose.
Thank you, Chair. So Natasha Beresford, Interim Strategic Director for Housing and Property Services. Evening, everyone.
Yeah, evening, everybody. My name is David Barrett. I'm one of the Assistant Directors responsible for strategic housing and delivery.
Hi everyone, Ollie Jackson, Head of Housing Operations. So I cover off housing management functions here at the Court.
I'm the Head of Asset Management. Essentially I deal with the repairs and maintenance of our council housing other than the compliance, so not the gas and the electric and asbestos and those types of things.
And if we could just go online to Hannah, my colleague Hannah Peacock, just to check she can hear us and see us. Hannah,
yes.
over to you.
Hello, good evening. I'm Hannah Peacock. I'm the Head of Strategy, Quality and Assurance.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Okay, so consideration of any matter referred to the committee in relation to a call-in. Don't believe there are any of those, which moves us on to item 6, action points from the previous meeting. For the minutes, there were none of those either.
Yes, Chair. Can I just on that? Yes, the one that I just raised is an outstanding action point.
Very well, noted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Okay, so that takes us on to our first sort of proper item of business, item 7, the work programme. We could just get a quick sort of briefing on the report from the relevant officer.
We're going into the agenda, Chair, or you want to brief on the work programme specifically?
Well, I suppose leading into the scrutiny itself, it would be nice just to have a quick summation of the work.
The downsizing policy, just to clarify.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so Oliver, hand it over.
Yeah, I'll take the downsizing policy, Chair. So we are pleased to bring our draft downsizing policy to members this evening to review and welcome any comments. Under occupation for local authorities is quite a big issue. We need to use our housing stock as effectively as we can do, and we recognise that we have a number of properties that our tenants currently occupying that aren't necessarily, are in many cases too big for their household needs. So we've identified this as being a particular area that we can focus upon, and we have drafted the downsizing policy to basically review our current approach to supporting people to move to a property that meets their household need. We have a current policy in place, which is called the Help to Move policy. To be frank, as we've included in the report, the uptake of that policy has been quite low over the past few years. And on review of that particular policy, we feel there's an opportunity to work with our tenants who are open to moving to a smaller property, to be able to support them both financially and practically, to consider that as an option. In order to look at the Help to Move policy, we carried out a significant amount of consultation with current tenants. And there was a number of really key messages that came out of that consultation. It was felt from our tenants that practical support to enable them to move to a property that meets their household need, as well as financial support to be able to do so, were really important. It was also felt that actually the policy needed to tell people what it actually did. You will see in the draft policy that's been forwarded on today, we've changed the name from Help to Move to Downsizing. We've moved away from offering kind of a one-size-fits-all approach to downsizing, and we are now offering, through the revised policy, two different options. One where we will support the individual practically, with removals, skip if necessary, recarpeting of properties, and reinstallation of white goods. Excuse me. And the second option where there is more of a financial package given to the individual or to the household to enable them to make their own arrangements to move to a smaller property. What's been really key throughout all the feedback with our tenants has been the need to have that support and that kind of wraparound package from our officers to be able to really support the individual and the household through that process from start to finish. And that's very much a key component of the revised policy. As I said, a lot of consultation that went into the development of the new consultation. Should it be agreed, having a communication plan with our current tenants to be able to get the message out there and to get that support offer out there is really important. And that's our intention should the policy be agreed. In a nutshell, that's the downsizing policy agenda item. Happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you. Yes, any comments or questions on downsizing policy? Oh,
I think he was before me.
oh,
Yeah.
go on, really, sorry.
I'm happy to wait, but right, thanks, Ollie. On the whole, I'm fine with the policy and what's been proposed there, mainly because when I try to put myself into the mind of the people who are likely to be affected and the people who will probably take it up. And I am sort of thinking that most of what's there, while it's good, I'm not really sure that's going to, people will, in my mind, have a binary thing of, great, there is assistance to help me move, but they're probably not going to be particularly specific on what that form that assistant takes until they've actually made the decision to move. So on that, my question, I apologise, it's sort of outside the policy. Are the officers' teams basically keeping a track of people that we suspect are in under-occupied houses in order to identify it? And if so I've got an enthusiastic nodding from that. The other side to it then is when a property becomes available, do we have a window before we sort of put that property publicly to have people interested, to almost go to the people that are very near it in the under-occupied places and try to see if they're interested? Because I'm sort of thinking that there are going to be some people who might be persuaded to move into a smaller place, but if they spent all of their lives in one street, that's where their network and everything is. They're going to be willing to move maybe to the next street, but they're not going to go across town. That's where they want to be. And so I'm just thinking that proactive side may help if we're not already doing it.
Thank you, Councillor. That's a really good point. And the simple answer is no, we don't have that arrangement at the moment. If a household is under occupying a property, they will be given a fairly beneficial points total to enable them to successfully bid in the main on other properties that are of their choosing. So we don't have that kind of midpoint before it goes live on our choice-based letting system. That being said, the policy does create that opportunity for us to offer that greater degree of support. So if there is support to be able to allow them to get the greater level of points and to kind of put them in contact or make them aware of properties that are being advertised on choice-based letting, we do hope that that will help to support people through that process. So, you know, there are a number of occasions where people that are considering downsizing are slightly older and have maybe lived in the family home for a number of years. We very much anticipate that that support-based package will help to facilitate that move. And it's something that we'll absolutely be monitoring as we're going along.
Okay. So not that I'm trying to sort of push council officers to basically being estate agents, but is that, in my mind, there's a timing thing. Somebody might be willing to consider downsizing, but they're probably not actively doing it. There will be some that, you know, might be struggling, especially with rent, etc. But there might be somebody else that's going to be open to it in the right time. And if they happen to look and say, is there anything in my area now?
Yeah.
And they can't find it, then they're probably not going to think about it for, you know, another 6 months. Whereas if you got sort of a thing where, you know, something pops up, you maybe reach out to somebody and say, well, this has just become available, you know, or almost a prompt, do they want to engage with you in that side?
Yeah, it's certainly something we can take forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Adeleke.
Thank you very much, yeah, and welcome to your new role. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On the whole, I think it's a very generous and considerate policy, which I think we help a lot of people, especially struggling tenants. Now, on the financial side, which you support them with, do you have a limit to how much you spend, and is it mean tested?
So we have everything that we're proposing through the revised policy is going to be provided within budget. We don't quite know what uptake it's going to have at the moment, so that will be closely monitored with our colleagues in finance. In terms of the incentive, the financial incentives that will be offered, it won't be means tested. People will still have to go through the eligibility side of things to be on the housing register in the first place. But the actual financial incentive won't be means tested. It will be based on the size of the property that they're giving up to the size of the property that they're moving to.
So I've got a supplementary question, please.
Please, with follow-up.
Thank you very much, but you still haven't answered my question. Do we have a cutoff point? I mean, for example, somebody may just require clearing up of carpets and things like that. Somebody else may require skip and so on and so forth. So do you have a cutoff point to say we're only going to spend X amount of money per tenant?
Well, in the policy, there's the two options. There is the first option where we will carry out that clearance, we will carry out that work. There is no necessarily kind of top end limit to that at the moment, because we recognise the financial benefits of getting that larger home that can take the pressure, some of the pressure off the housing register. So there is no upper limit on that currently. There is an upper limit on the second option in terms of the lump sum that will be given to someone moving from a 4-bedroom property to one of our supported housing properties, and that limit is £5,000 as per the policy.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Madden.
Thank you. First of all, can I just say Thank you. This is so badly needed. We've got so many people sitting in houses that are far too big for them because they've lived there they've raised their families there, and then their families have left home, and then they're sitting there. I've had situations where an elderly resident rang me up and demanded a wet room, and they were living in a 4-bedroom house and would not even entertain moving. It was their right to be there, and it's just, we need to release these houses for families that really need that space. So I'm so grateful that this has come to us. I kind of knew it was coming, and I'm so pleased to see it. There was just one question I had. Let me just remind myself what it was now, because I was getting too excited there for a moment. Oh yeah. The option 1, the council will arrange and pay for the cost of removals. Does that include a removal company coming in and doing all the packing for them? Because obviously if it's an elderly resident that's not able to do all that themselves, it's not just like a removal company coming and taking a load of filled up boxes, but actually to pack for them.
It includes packing because we recognise that for many people is part of the obstruction to moving.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks. Well done. It's just great.
Councillor Baradell.
Thank you, Chair. On the financial point, how's this paid for, like generally? Is it HRA, is it general fund? Where does the money come from? HRA, yeah. Cool. And then presumably there's a budget for the current help to move policy. I wondered what the budget was annually for the current system.
£75,000 per year.
Cool. And then, so you mentioned that you don't have at the moment a cap or an idea, but presumably there will be a budget for the scheme. Do you anticipate the new scheme being a larger financial pressure on the council, or?
So historically, based on the numbers of downsizing moves that we've had over the last 3 years, we've been under budget for the last 3 years. Obviously, the change in policy makes it more financially attractive for people and practically attractive for people. So we hope that there will be a greater uptake. It is hard to gauge how popular it will be. So I think it's an area that we will monitor as we're going throughout the life cycle of the policy. But again, I think we keep coming back to the financial benefits of using the properties that we've got more effectively. If we need to look at increasing budget sort of year on year, that's certainly something that we will include as part of our service planning and budget setting. But I think this first year almost it's a opportunity for us to see how much of an uptake there will be.
And then my other concern then is if we do, if this new system comes in and then we do set a budget, what happens if that budget cap is reached after like 2 or 3 months? If suddenly there's a massive demand for the service, this is probably more generally a question about how council finances work. But if that cap's reached, is there an option to, because it would be bad to turn people away?
Of course, so really close monitoring from a financial perspective. So the team working very closely with finance team in terms of modelling and looking at the onward forecasting. We appreciate it's really difficult at this time to understand the uptake. I think it's really important to recognise that whilst this is a really welcome policy, we still are in the realms of having to engage with our tenants and encouraging them to consider moving. We can't force them to move, so there will be a slow process in terms of that engagement. Recognising that some of the demands for larger accommodation, particularly accommodation that may require access to adapted need, are for households who are in temporary accommodation. The team also have access to be able to draw on supporting grants that we have within service that support activity around prevention of homelessness. So where we're able to identify budget pressure, we can utilise other grants to assist in moving households who best need this accommodation. So finance teams working very, very closely to ensure close monitoring and modelling of the impact on the HRA, which will inform future forecasting as we move into the HRA business planning process, which is just about to start. And then we have, as I've just mentioned, access to grants that will support wider prevention of homelessness activity, which, as members will know from other presentations at this committee, will directly contribute to lowering pressure around temporary accommodation, and then the Onward General Fund impacts in terms of spends on bed and breakfast. So not looking at this situation in isolation and looking across the piece in terms of the broader benefits that it will have for the housing service.
I think Councillor Madam was.
No, I'm happy to. I'm still typing up my questions.
No problem with that, kid. Sorry, it's in my peripheral vision. That's quite all right. Please.
Julie?
Yeah, Julie, thank you.
Hi, so I also welcome this paper, and I think I speak on behalf of most of the members here on that point. But I am curious, probably for the portfolio holder, when we have such a historical problem, and we still don't know if this project will actually, bring forward more properties. Has there been any work to scope the possibility of limiting the tenancy agreements that we have, particularly for the larger properties, so that instead of being open-ended or whatever they are at the moment, that they be, when your youngest child reaches 18, for it to be reviewed? Portfolio, it's a strategic thing, isn't it?
Yeah, please go. I have a comment to add at the end anyway, so
So just from a legal perspective, once you've had a household that has progressed through their introductory tenancy period, and then they trip into what we would call a secure tenancy period, our tenancy framework and the Housing Act legislation doesn't enable us to, at that point, make a stipulation around you must downsize or place restrictions on a household as to a specific type of accommodation that they will live in. Where we can do that is in the case of disabled adaptations, for example. So we're able to stipulate that a house that has had significant adaptations, which, as you will be familiar with, are significant and costly in terms of the impacts for the HRA, those properties we're able to place a restriction on them in terms of right to buy. But what we can't do is prevent or insist that a household must move when their household circumstances change.
So did you say that is in law we can't do that, did you say?
We can't stipulate that a tenant must move when their circumstances change to an alternative form of provision. Secure tenancy provides exactly that, security of tenure. And I think members will be familiar with the fact that we've moved back to security of tenure from fixed term tenancies, which would enable us to review the household circumstances at the point of the fixed tenancy coming through to expiry, and at that point we are able to make a determination as to the suitability of the accommodation, and then a move to potentially reallocating something more suitable to households' needs. But as we're a local authority that offer fixed term tenancy, secure tenancy, apologies, then that security of tenancy remains for the lifetime of the tenancy.
I'm happy to comment as well. Yeah, so as Natasha said, in Decorum we offer lifetime tenancies or secure tenancy, as she's calling, which means once you've been allocated a property, we have no right to ask you to leave. It is entirely up to the family or the couple who's remained in the property. Others may have moved out, and we clearly know they have moved out as well, let alone if they're even left at 17, not 18. We cannot ask them to downsize or make regulations around it. But the uptake of this has been very, very low, as you can see in the document. And hence we really wanted to work on this policy to bring up to the standard, to interest more people, create more awareness, maybe myth busting around supported living, because a lot of people think supported living, oh, I can walk, I don't need supported living. But that's not a care home. It's you know what supported living in anyway, but a lot of people don't. And during my period of being housing portfolio holder, I've dealt with lots of cases where I've spoken to people who were living in a 4-bedroom single occupier, but did not know about the options, or information was there on the website, but I think we need to create more information around, could it be via comms, could it be making some actual physical, like brochures for people so we can hand out. I also think that to increase the uptake, it's not just about us putting the information on a website. We may have to go on our data, check who's the tenant, where we think it may be suitable. We may post this information. We may ask, can we meet you, and explain the options. But again, that's only to create the information, not at all to persuade people to downsize. But yeah, if it works, we'll know soon that it's a lot of people going for it or not. At the moment, I don't think we're concerned about a huge uptake that we can't take care of it. In terms of the cost side of it and in terms of the support side of it. And this is another thing we've been talking about to make sure when we are, if somebody shows interest in the downsize, we provide a dedicated support. So it's not like they have to call up officers for everything. They may have one dedicated name who they would be dealing throughout this whole process. And again, I think something to cover what Rick asked as well is that once they show they're interested, it's not a quick process, as they, with their age, things have to be actually slow to make sure they're fully in agreement of doing this and not feeling that we've seen a property near you, do you want to come? And they might feel, are we trying to sell something? So it is one of the things where people are very specific as well, that they're saying they really want to be there. And we've dealt with some of the downsizing where it took a long time because they wanted to be in a specific area. But I think it's as I said, it's all about creating the information, creating an environment, and I think the incentive side of it as well. Based on some of the survey, we do understand a lot of people actually want the support more than the money.
I think that's a really important point that Simi shares there through the extensive engagement sessions that we had, face-to-face sessions led by the team with residents. I think there had historically been a tendency, I think it's fair to say, that perhaps the driver of not taking up downsizing had been the lack of a significant financial package. But the reality is exactly as explained there, that residents are sharing that they would welcome more support. This is quite an emotional time for them, quite a wrenching decision to make in terms of moving from a property that will have been the family home in some cases for many, many years and decades in other cases. And so it's important that we provide that hand-holding support to provide reassurance and guidance throughout that process. But as you've explained, that can mean hand-holding through multiple discussions about potential properties in potential areas until an individual or a household feels safe about the decision they are to make. And I had the pleasure yesterday afternoon of meeting a resident who'd done exactly that, who had been liaising with our team for 6 years about discussions around downsizing from her former home, a home that she hadn't been able to access the upstairs for all of that time and had been sleeping in the lounge area, and she was ecstatic to have been allocated one of the new build homes at Mountbatten View and just said it had changed her life, and she couldn't believe that it had taken her that long to make that decision. But I think it's really important for us as officers to recognise that this is their home. This is their home where they've had security of tenure for some time. They will have brought up families in that home and experienced life events that we all experience on a day-to-day basis, and so we need to be considerate in our approach in terms of supporting them to make that decision. And whilst we recognise the pressure for us in terms of bringing back in to use those larger family size homes for families that need it, we need to have a balanced approach in terms of supporting the residents who are giving up those homes.
And I think downsizing also have another incentive, which is knowing that you're going to house a family who's in need. Again, there's a case where partners are living with their parents with 2 children and 2 children just because we haven't got a 4-bedroom for them. So things like this, it does, we don't have to obviously tell them the cases going on in the background, but I think it's important for them to know that there are long waiting lists, and if they downsize, if they want to do it for the good reason as well, which is providing for those who've been waiting and who don't have suitable properties. And I think future isn't to build bigger houses anyway. Future is to build, the needs are reducing in terms of 4 beds. and growing more towards 2-bed to 3-bed anyway. So I don't think there are lots of planned building 4 beds around anyway. And hence we need to make it enough of an incentive. Could it be for some people, giving up their house furthest, financial, or the actual understanding that their life would be much better with the right size of the property. They're taking care of a big size garden, the amount of furniture, they only use one room in their house just because they don't know there are other and better options. It's a mixture of lots of things, but I'm glad to see good support in the room as well for this policy.
Okay, thank you, Simi and Natasha. Any follow-up from Councillor Banks?
Thank you very much.
No trouble at all. Move on to Councillor Mann in that case.
Thank you. Actually, Julian Julian, that's the question I was typing at the time. But my questions have grown a bit, so I'm so sorry about this, but they're all related. But was it Decorum's choice to move to this assured tenancy scheme? You said that we did have fixed tenancies and now it's assured. And if it was Decorum's choice to move rather than a government instruction to move, what prompted that decision?
So it's secure. It's a secure tenancy, not an assured tenancy. Okay. That's important to make that point because they're two different things. Right. So previously we had secure tenancies. No, it's fine. Previously we had secure tenancies. Then the Localism Act gave us the opportunity to introduce fixed term tenancies, which we did for a period of time. One of the hopes was that we would be able to use our stock more effectively by, at the end of the fixed term tenancy, we review it, and if that household no longer met the needs of that individual, then they would move. I think it's fair to say it didn't have the desired effect. Many people appealed the decision that was made at the end of that fixed term tenancy due to a number of issues, and it didn't quite have the effect of utilising the stock as best we can. So we made the decision to revert, or the decision was made in consultation with members to revert back to secure tenancies, which has been in place for a period of time now.
Sorry, all right, if I just carry on?
Oh, absolutely, yes, you're always welcome to a follow-up.
Is this also, let me see. Oh yeah, is that policy also how allocated housing associations work in the Decorum area? So do they have to work to our same idea? So if someone's in for instance, a Hightown property, they've got it for life as well?
So registered providers will typically operate under their own frameworks and have their own allocations policy. So in addition to allocating homes via our allocations policy, in many cases they also operate their own housing or transfer lists. So more common is that housing associations offer tenancy agreements that are either assured or intermediate rented assured short hold tenancies. So it will depend on the type of property and the registered provider concerned. And then similarly, where DBC our tenants will have the right to buy after a period of time, housing association tenants have the right to acquire. So some variations in terms of the rights that are open to tenants of the housing association.
I don't know what the difference between right to buy and right to acquire is, but that's...
We can certainly, there's some details that we can...
I find it really interesting.
We can provide some information for members if it's of interest.
Yeah, that would be really good.
Maybe we'll follow up with at the end of the meeting. Yeah. Any further questions on item 8?
I've got one more if no one else is, but I'll wait till everyone else has had a say. That's right.
Not seeing anything going round, so Councillor Madden, if you'd like to go on.
Very quick question. With an ageing population, is this a problem that's going to just get worse?
I mean, it's difficult to say. We have got a good supported housing offer to tenants. We've got a large proportion of supported housing properties available to people. The downsizing policy will help to support people move from a larger property into our supported housing stock, if that's something that they choose. But also it gives the flexibility for older people to move to a smaller general needs property as well, whereas previously it was a bit more of a direct link between general needs into supported housing. So it's difficult to tell. I think we believe that the support offer will help to facilitate the move for people that may not have considered it so much previously. But I think it's important to recognise this is going to give us an opportunity to monitor it, and it may be that we need to tweak things along the way, but we will be keeping a very close eye on the movement, both from a financial perspective, but also from an uptake and using our stock as best we can. So it's a watching brief in many respects.
I think also just to add to what Ollie shared is absolutely right, but we also work closely with Hertfordshire County Council in terms of their long-term adult care service strategy. So David chairs the Decorum Accommodation Board. We co-chair that with Hertfordshire County Council. It's an opportunity for us to look at opportunities to strengthen and develop supported housing and specialist housing provision. Members will have seen via this committee the supported housing strategy that Oliver and team developed, and that was approved earlier on this year. So we recognise as an ageing population. You'll also be familiar with the wider strategic asset review that gives us the opportunity to look at our stock and the opportunity that are afforded by further reconsideration of current stock that may not be fit for purpose and future regeneration opportunities. So we look at it in the round, working very closely with our partners and identify opportunities to ensure that we can maximise relevant supported housing options for individuals who need it, be that learning disability or wider adult care need.
Thank you very much and well done. Thank you.
I believe we have something from Councillor Stevens and then Councillor Allen.
Picking up on something that the portfolio holder mentioned, publicity, etc., to encourage people to consider relocating. It would be helpful to have something like a brochure with effectively testimonials from people who have gone through this, before and after, and we're very happy with what we've got, and this is how it got to where we are, so that people can get some reassurance that the process works and that the outcome is good. And we're thinking in terms of needing publicity, not the policy, because the policy no one's going to read apart from, dare I say it, officers. Yeah, and given the experience that we have in the private sector, the Castle Village folk, a long time ago, the average age of moving is 75, right? And people find a new lease of life when they've done a relocation like that. Whereas the demographic that we're trying to approach, I guess, is probably much the same. They're quite elderly, they've lost their family, they don't have anybody there to support them through this process. So they need a lot of help to get them through this. And having testimonials, etc., that it has been a good experience would help give them that reassurance. And I'd like to see that sort of document prepared.
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's the communication is absolutely key to this. So certainly take that point. Thank you.
Yeah, it's easy to see it's being against your own interest. Definitely important to reinforce that it can actually be a very positive step. Councillor Adeleke.
Just a very quick point. Are we unique as a council in doing this, or are we following in the footsteps of another local authority?
So it's quite typical for local authorities to have downsizing policies in place that support moves. Part of the development of the policy was carrying out a benchmarking exercise both within the county for those stock retaining local authorities in Hertfordshire, but we look beyond that as well to kind of understand what the practical and financial packages were that were on offer. So no, we're not alone in this. I think we feel that the revised packages available through the policy is more attractive, but yeah, we're certainly not alone as a local authority in seeing downsizing as an opportunity to use our stock better.
Thank you.
Jolly good. If we have no further questions on the downsizing policy, we will move on to item 9, the regulatory action plan. We'll take the report as read and then move on to the officers for a briefing.
Thank you, Chair. So you may remember this time last year we were inspected by the regulator, the newly formed regulator of social housing. We were at the front end, one of the first local authorities to be inspected, and Hannah is going to walk you through this report and explain what our action plan is looking like to respond to the regulator. We continue to hold regular meetings with the regulator. We've developed this plan, and over to Hannah.
Thank you, David. So yes, as you will have seen within the report, we have, following on from the Social Housing Regulation Act, seen new powers awarded to the regulator to oversee the services that we provide, but also to intervene if those do not reach the standards that they have set within that new regulatory framework. So we were one of the first local authorities to be inspected against those new standards, and the inspection that took place last year involved a detailed series of documentary evidence reviews, but also in-person inspection via the inspection team from the regulator. So there are 4 gradings, with C1 being the very top, and then C4 being the very bottom, where there are very serious failings and intervention needed. We received the C2 grading, and as David referenced, that has been cited through this committee previously. The regulatory judgment is available and publicly published by the regulator for awareness as well. So whilst we were pleased with the C2 grading, which, as you will have seen from the report, we're only a small number of local authorities that have received that C2 grading so far. There is that ambition for us to get to that C1, and that is an ambition that is enforced by the regulator. They are expecting to see us progress and aim for that C1 status. So in order to approach what we wanted to do with those areas for improvement that were noted out of the regulatory judgment, we've developed the regulatory action plan, which is appendices to the report. So the regulatory action plan is covering the areas for improvement that were highlighted as a result of the regulatory judgment. It outlines the actions that we are already undertaking. So, for example, with the stock condition survey, at the time of the inspection, we had around 40% of our properties that had been surveyed. We already had an existing stock condition survey programme underway, but also outlining any new actions that we have developed as a result of the regulatory judgment, and in order to address those. So those are areas such as bringing together work that's been done on complaints, but also addressing the new digital platform and what we can be doing better on complaints to address that as an area for improvement that the regulator has highlighted. So the regulatory action plan has been developed by the Housing Transformation and Improvement Programme Learning from Inspection work stream. We have taken it through the internal stakeholders, but we have also put it forward to to the regulator. We have developed a good working relationship with the post-inspection team from the regulator for social housing. They are very encouraging of us working towards that C1, and they have provided us with advice and guidance that have further shaped the regulatory action plan that was appendixed to the report. So the report also outlines our plan for the monitoring and governance of that regulatory action plan. So that is both internally through our HTIP programme board, but also due to be programmed in for regular reviews from yourselves in the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, following through to the portfolio holder and up eventually to Cabinet on an annual basis. So in conclusion, the regulatory action plan is being brought to you for awareness and for approval as we look to move this forward through to Cabinet, and it outlines the actions that we are expecting to take that will address the areas for improvement that have been highlighted by the regulator. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Hannah. Yeah, I believe Councillor Adeleke is first.
Thank you. It's good to be first. Thank you very much for bringing the she's disappeared.
Am I back?
Yeah, you disappeared, but you can still hear us, I think. Thank you very much for bringing this before the committee. I think getting to C2 is much better than 3 or 4, but I would have preferred you to get to C1. So I know that you are working towards that. So two questions. When is the next regulatory exercise going to take place? And who are your stakeholders that you are working with to ensure that when you come round again to this exercise, you achieve the C1 that you are aiming for? Okay, and then the third part of it is, are members involved in your planning process to move to this C1?
I'll step in first and then allow officers to follow up if that's okay. So I guess firstly, we were really proud of the C2 and rightly so, and I think important for members to be aware that as we stepped into this regulatory framework that was introduced last year, all local authorities were very clearly told that no local authority would receive a C1. Given that this was the first inspection regime that was being undertaken. So we were ambitious for a C2. That's where we felt that we were, and we were very much very pleased to have received that too. And as yet, we are proven to be right that no local authority has received a C1. Majority of C3s with a spattering of C2s, and you may be aware that the only other Herts local authority to have been assessed thus far and have received a C2 is Stevenage Borough Council. So really positive result for us and reflective of the improvement journey that we're on. In terms of stakeholders, obviously there are a wide range of stakeholders engaged in the delivery of services across the housing and property service, both voluntary sector and wider organisations. They're not necessarily directly involved in the inspection process. The inspection process is a process that is led by the regulator's inspection team. They come in and deliver a desktop exercise and assessment of a whole range of information that is provided to them in advance by Hannah and her team, is uploaded to a dedicated portal. That can be everything from specific policy documents to budgetary information, through to deep dive information around performance data, audit reports, etc. And then officers are interviewed, very much like you would expect with an Ofsted style inspection. Officers are interviewed over a series of 3 days, asking their opinion and their view on various documentation. Hannah and the team curated those sessions really robustly for the inspection team. We have members here who will have been involved in that process, so through the inspection process, in addition to meeting specific staff members across the team, and the regulator tell us who they would like to meet. We're not able to put in front of them specific officers that we would like them to meet, so I very much ask that on this day we would like to see the leader of the council, and on this day we would like to see the chief executive or the portfolio holder of the relevant service, and those individuals are interviewed as part of that process and are asked to explain their version of accounts in terms of the information that officers have presented. So it ensures that there is a series of processes that really validates or not the information that has been provided. And then as Hannah outlines, throughout the improvement process and the developmental work that we continue to do as a service, we will continue to update you on the varying actions that are being undertaken to take us on that improvement journey. But I know that David would quite like to add.
Yeah, just to add to that, the re-inspection process does not involve waiting a set period of time and they come in and do the full inspection. We're meeting the regulator on a regular basis, and this action plan is informing them, and they will essentially go through, and when they're satisfied that all this criteria in the action plan has been achieved, they are then in a position to move to confirming a C1. They don't undertake a full re-inspection.
Thank you. Thank you.
Satisfactory, no follow-ups. Yes, Councillor Johnson.
Following on from that, just in terms of the post-inspection team having regular meetings, is it a question of actually arranging these meetings, or do they just turn up like the Spanish Inquisition?
No, they're diarised for the next year. So, yeah, essentially quarterly meetings, although we do have an additional one with them next month, but they're diaried out, they're planned, there's an agenda.
They're expected even.
And, yeah, and it's very collaborative.
Thank you. I thought I'd seen something about quarterly update, but then I couldn't find it, so I just wanted to be clear on that point. Thank you.
I think in the forward plan, there is a plan to bring an update to you in 6 months' time on the position, so we will be doing that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
If we have nothing further on the regulatory action plan, we do agree it going forward. That brings us on to item 10, any other business. Now we have some other business, the Performance and Tenants Voice Report. This is being brought forward as the Chair OSC meeting has not had an opportunity to go ahead yet, so it's had to be slotted in slightly differently. I believe Hannah is taking this forward again, although we're taking its red. Natasha, what's happening?
Chair, if I could set the scene just in terms of this item, because it is very much directly linked to the previous item. So historically, this committee would have seen the tenant voice quarterly voice and performance reports. As you members will be familiar, we've moved to a portal process where performance reports will in future be uploaded to your portal for your viewing. This performance report is very much linked to directly the regulatory activity and us being able to determine our statutory compliance with that activity. So we intend going forward that it won't be uploaded to the portal as other performance reports because it's not a typical performance report. We have a regulatory requirement to demonstrate to the regulator our compliance with the tenant satisfaction measures and the standard that is upheld by the regulator themselves. So this report has been appended to the committee's AOB for this evening, but going forward you will see this report in a different guise. So the team will be developing an amended format that brings it to you in a format that allows us to comply with the regulatory's requirements, but also with this committee's new requirements in terms of onward reporting. So I'll hand over to Hannah just to provide some brief introduction to the report. We appreciate it's a very detailed item, but there's an awful lot happening across the housing and property service that we want you to be aware of. Hannah, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, the papers have been circulated to you previously, and there was a slight challenge in relation to pulling that together. As you'll have seen, there was a previous version that was circulated with some of the preparatory comments. I think that just evidenced that it is a co-produced document that pulls together narrative from across the service in order to be presented through to yourselves this evening. So the amended version without the comments has also been circulated. So I won't go into it in depth. The performance report is really highlighting the areas of key performance highlights, which we have seen some really continued trajectory of good performance that has been taking place over the last year. But it also recognises areas of improvement that are needed. So we have 3 rendered indicators that are noted in the report and the actions and the activities that we are doing in order to address those. It also highlights areas of the business that we believe that members and our residents are interested in. So areas such as compliance, which continues to be an area of key focus across the service. Simply put, we need to keep our residents safe in their homes, but also areas such as damp and mould, ASB, and responsive repairs. It also then goes into some level of detail relating to our complaints. That's a continued area of focus for the Directorate, and that is highlighted within the report. It touches on the learning from inspection workstream that then links back, as Natasha said, to the regulatory action plan, and then also touches on the benchmarking that we are working to deliver for the directorate, so that we are getting a better sense of where our services are placed in relation to other organisations of similar size and stockholding capacity as well. Finally, it covers areas of tenant engagement. So a particularly strong piece relating to building safety engagement, which has been delivered in the last quarter, and also what we have been doing to address areas of dissatisfaction that were noted in the previous Performance and Tenants Voice report on ASB and new build satisfaction. So some really important messages within that tenant voice sphere. And finally, it just also then notes the Tenant and Leaseholder Committee, which did see the downsizing policy that has been discussed by yourselves this evening, and they really recognise the work that Paul and his team had done to introduce tenant voice into that process. So the report is available, as is the attached dashboard and comparison information regarding to Housemarque. We do have officers available for you this evening for particular areas of focus, but happy to answer any general questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. A meaty report, but one that I certainly found to be very informative. Do we have any questions from the committee? Councillor Friedman.
Not so much a question, just a nudge and reminder. We've obviously got a lot of things in the report that demonstrate our duty to tenants and how we sort of value them. But leaseholders get mentioned only in terms of, oh, it's the tenant and leaseholder committee we spoke to. I realise that obviously leaseholders we have different duties to leaseholders, but my experience is they are a group that feels excluded and alienated by council decisions more than tenants. I would have liked to have seen more sort of acknowledgement of that on this report, especially on those parts when we're talking about buildings, damp and mould, etc. These are things that affect them. So, it's great that we've got a tenants' voice report. I'd just like to sort of show that we've tried to reach out and we're collecting those for leaseholders as well. I'm not saying we didn't, it's just the report doesn't appear to make it sound like we did.
No, that's noted. Thank you very much, Councillor, for your feedback. I think useful for me to just cite you on those KPIs being standardised KPIs that are directly linked through to the regulator framework and inform the outcome of measures that have been set and agreed by this committee. But I take on board your points and can confirm that the service are doing some detailed work with leaseholders currently in respect of the leasehold variation and the way that we charge our fees, and we'll be bringing items back to this committee specifically in relation to that work very shortly. But thank you. I've made a note of that.
Councillor Harden.
Thank you. Just on housing operations performance, total number of households in temporary accommodation. I was just trying to work out the figure there and understanding the decimal point. I see the decimal point is kind of running all the way through the report, so that's probably why it's there. But could you just confirm whether those figures are individual people or what are you classing as household? It's on page 67. Page 67, thank you.
So that is a cumulative figure, Councillor, so we'll look at that for you. But as at today, the current households in temporary accommodation are in the region of 233 households. So we'll need to look at that figure and the way that's pulled through. Hannah, we can take a note to look at that.
Okay, cool. So it doesn't require the decimal point in that, does it?
No, it doesn't, but we can look at the system there.
So what is a household? Is that a family unit? Or
it could be a family, or it could be an individual. Varying households in temporary accommodation. So the total number of households in temporary accommodation, but they'll be in varying states of decision and process within that stage.
And can I ask, why do we measure it as households as opposed to number of individuals?
Because that's in line with the statutory framework set by central government in line with the Housing Act 1996, Part 7. So we have a dedicated return, so we actually directly report through to MHCLG in relation to homelessness statistics. So a return called HCLIC, which is available to members to review online, and we're required to report on a range of varying information to central government. The most pertinent figure that is interesting to MHCLG are the number of households with children in temporary accommodation for up to 6 weeks or past that 6-week point. And I'm very pleased to say that we're a local authority that proactively complies with families with children in temporary accommodation, particularly B&B for those periods, but it's set in line with their framework.
Councillor Madden first and then Councillor Adderley.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is entirely the right place to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. The antisocial behaviour in the report, it talks about proactive engagement sessions and a visit to a family. Where does if the antisocial behaviour team go into a family who are the perpetrators of antisocial behaviour, where does their tenancy, the legality of their tenancy sit? Do we as a council have a right to evict and not rehome, or do we? How does it work?
So,
yeah.
It's a really broad area. I'm glad you asked that question. It's a really broad area, and we could talk extensively about it. You'll be pleased to know that your deep dive item in September will cover the aspect of tenancy management process from end to end. But in short, yes, if we have reason to believe that antisocial behaviour is being perpetrated by a household, then there are a range of sanctions that can be applied. We utilise the Housing Act, but we also use crime and policing powers in terms of ASB. It will depend on the severity of the antisocial behaviour. So in some instances, we would start with warning notifications, and we will engage with households, and we'll look to explore aspects like mediation, depending on the nature of the issue. If it's a broader issue around noise nuisance or pollution, for example, then we work collaboratively with the neighbourhood delivery team and stand-up activity with our environmental community protection officers to install things like noise monitoring equipment and such like. So the team have what we call a neighbourhood action group, where they work together collaboratively to wrap around actions in respect of a household. But in severe situations where there is ongoing and prolonged situations, we would have stepped process. Unfortunately, it's not as straightforward as having a 3 strikes and you're out process. So that may involve taking time going through things like mediation, proactive engagement, regular visits from the tenancy management and antisocial behaviour officer, and then ensues things like community protection warning notices before we move into community protection notices. In severe situations, we may instigate banning letters and specific behavioural arrangements around certain household members. So things like acceptable behaviour contracts for young people if they are the perpetrators of behaviour, but very much a partnership approach. So we work in partnership with the community policing team, as well as the ASB officers working with the tenancy management team. But you're absolutely right. In situations where we have prolonged ASB, then the tenancy is absolutely at risk, and that's where the tenancy management team would serve what we call a notice seeking possession with the intent to take action. And if behaviour continues, then we see that action through to the courts. I think it's important to note that any kind of tenancy action, be that due to rent arrears or ASB, is very much at the mercy of the court at that stage. Yeah. We present information to the judge, and the officer will advocate on behalf of the council in respect of the measures that we have taken to try and bring about a solution in a situation, and the judge will make a determination on that basis, and we will work with the determination by the judge. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess it's just worth noting that we're currently in the process of reviewing our tenancy agreement to make sure it's as robust as it can be. for antisocial behaviour and all other elements of it to give us the greatest opportunity to take action when appropriate. So that process is ongoing at the moment.
Excellent, thank you.
Chair, can I do a supplementary that follows on from that? Okay.
You may.
Thank you. How much do your powers extend to housing associations having the same ability that we do with council tenants when you've got housing associations that are doing ASB?
Good question. So from a community safety partnership governance perspective, so we have a governance framework. DBC leads the partnership. The chair of the community safety partnership is the chief executive, and we work with the statutory responsible authority partners, so police, fire, Hertfordshire County Council, youth offending team, and so on. The ICB are also engaged in that framework. So the registered providers have their own powers that they're able to use. So, for example, in the case of serious ASB that might relate to drug and alcohol issues within a property, or a property being used to perpetrate significant issues relating to drugs and alcohol, we would expect that the housing association engages proactively with us and our policing partners to utilise their own powers, rather than expecting the police to draw on their powers. But there are examples where registered providers have limited resources. Through that partnership, we may use those shared resources to support activity, particularly when it's in the interest of wider residents. But registered providers do have very similar powers, and they're able to serve notices to end tenancies and warning notices. But the wider aspects will require drawing on policing and community safety powers to serve other banning orders and interventions, such as injunctions, for example.
So the council can, so if a housing association isn't supporting its tenant with antisocial behaviour issues, does the council have kind of ability to be able to guide the association in being more proactive?
We can guide, and through the community safety partnership we would do. So all of our registered providers that hold stock locally are active members of what we call a joint action group. They meet monthly to tackle instances of locality-based antisocial behaviour, but people-based antisocial behaviour also in the borough. And so where we feel that they're not using, or organisations aren't using the full weight of their powers, there will be a multidisciplinary team meeting to explore and discuss the opportunities and the options that are available to bring about redress. Where we feel that an organisation, irrespective of who the organisation is, isn't utilising the full weight of their powers, then we would use our own legal advice to bring about action. So in that situation, we may be able to, through a will or service of a CPW on an organisation, we can bring about action, for example. So that's not a decision that we as an organisation would take lightly, because you would want to use your effective relationship management and partnership work to bring about solution.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Ask what CPW was.
A community protection warning. So it is in effect a letter, councillor, that will warn an individual that if they continue to perpetrate such behaviour, then that notification could be escalated to a notice. And that's the first step of pursuing court action and taking further interventions that might include an injunction.
Thank you for the point of information. Yes, Councillor Adeleke.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to digress a little bit, I think as a department, housing, you've done extremely well over the years, say 10 years, 15 years, from where you were before to where you are today, with all your new initiatives and, God knows, I think you've done very well. And then through the chair, I want to commend what we've achieved, till today. Now, coming to my question now, which is on 6.2. Responsive repair completed per 1,000 properties remain below national median. Is there any specific reason or reasons for that?
I don't know, Councillor, which figure were you referring to?
Is under 6.2.
61.
Comparing our
6.2 of the report, so comparing the performance against national housing benchmarking.
So apologies, yes. So this is the number of repairs that we get reported from residents compared to what other organisations have. So It's a difficult statistic to comment on from benchmarking because people have different profiles of their repairs. So we have fewer repairs per 1,000 properties than other comparable organisations, which is a good thing, not a bad thing, because what we want to do is push as much of our repair work through a planned programme, not a reactive programme, because a planned programme is much cheaper to deliver than sending one person out to do one repair at one point and then sending someone else to go out somewhere else. So it's reflective of a good achievement that we're not excessively burdening our revenue pressures by repairing lots and lots of properties. We do unfortunately though have a much higher average cost per repair because of the profile of the repairs that we do get. So we're not quite getting the benefit on the revenue account. So we have a lot of roofing failures because particularly in Hemel, a lot of our properties were built roughly at the same time. So the roofs fail at roughly the same time. And we're in that period now where we're seeing a lot of that work. And obviously they involve scaffolding and very expensive types of work. But it's certainly a good achievement that we're below that average in terms of the number of responsive repairs that we have.
Thank you, Chief.
Jolly good. Right, yes, if we have nothing further from that, I think we are happy to call the meeting to a close. I thank you all for coming.